So I began planning to move to Maine in 2005. My husband was getting ready to retire, and we knew we did not want to stay in the New York metropolitan area. At the time, I assumed that I would leave that job with the Association of Junior Leagues and find something new. So I was telling a longtime colleague of my nascent plans, and she said, "I'm working on a project with a colleague in Maine. Why don't you talk to him?" His name was Tony Scucci, and if you don't know who Tony is, he is an ICL graduate. He is a board-sourced senior governance consultant and someone deeply knowledgeable about all things nonprofits. Tony gave me two pieces of advice. First, that I should participate in the leadership intensive. The second was that I should be prepared for a very different landscape in terms of salary. Remember, I was coming from New York. And should, if possible, try to bring work with me. I actually followed both of those pieces of advice, though today I will focus only on the first, the leadership intensive. We moved in June, so the fall of 2007 was just too soon. We were still living among boxes and trying to figure out where we were. However, that following late winter, I did begin my inquiry and I applied, and as the expression goes, I've never looked back. I'll admit that the more transactional appeal of the leadership intensive was that I would be meeting a lot of really interesting people. And that's nothing to sneeze at. Some of my closest friends, now that I've lived here for 17 years, are members of the Mighty Pi class of 2008-2009. But it's called Leadership Intensive for a reason. I can unequivocally say that it was pure luxury to be able to spend 9-ish months with a group of fascinatingly diverse individuals, allowing our minds and our hearts to just roll around in the land of leadership. We were diverse in all of the dimensions talked about so frequently today. More meaningfully for me, though, were the many highly diverse reasons that brought us together. Some of us were entering the downward part of our careers. Some were in that very messy middle of dissatisfaction with the present, but little clarity about what could be next. Some were facing hugely challenging and potentially quite painful decisions. Some sort of got signed up for the experience and weren't quite sure what they'd gotten themselves into. And so together we embarked on a journey to plumb the depths of leadership so that we could join the growing group of ICL alums who were committed to making our communities better. First and foremost, this experience is about leadership, not about leaders. In fact, partly through our experience together, some of my colleagues left positions where they were a designated leader, choosing to pursue an entirely new path because of what they were learning about leadership. So what did I learn, and how has my ICL experience influenced and impacted my life since then? I have to start with the power of listening, of really listening. I'd been introduced to the principle of active listening in an anti-racism seminar several years before I came to ICL, so I had a grounding in the concept. But what the intensive did for me was to help me listen in multiple dimensions. I learned to listen for state of mind or state of heart, as well as for meaning. I learned that deep listening was likely to impact what I had been thinking or feeling, not in a distracting way that took me away from who was speaking, but rather in a way that connected me even more closely to who was speaking. By habit, I am someone who is drawn to certainty and decisive decision-making, a great skill in some instances. Not so much, though, when it's about building connections and relationships, about puzzling through issues that have numerous elements and no clear best choice. So the deep listening that was foundational in ICL really helped me build my capacity for ambiguity, multiple truths, and even indecisiveness when appropriate. I can now tap into an actual visceral feeling when I am starting to race to a decision that warrants more listening, and I credit ICL for that. Then there are the dimensions of success: process, relationships, purpose. A triad that is a powerful framework for understanding the dynamic nature of productive action and decision. And we learned that focusing on any one of the elements to the diminishment of the others would result in suboptimum performance. As I have moved on from the ICL experience, I'm regularly reminded that even if we can't always keep the three elements in perfect balance, failing to consider the impact on any one of them is diminished leadership. And now let's talk about the big C, collaboration. a word that I think has become so overused as to often lose any actionable meaning. We all know that its Latin roots are about co-laboring, but for me it's always been much more about co-creation, a process whereby what is built comes from the imagination and the creativity of the builders. Okay, so that got a little theoretical. Woven throughout the entire ICL experience was a constant reminder about the power of collaboration in the deeper sense. Whether it was building something when each participant had a piece of the puzzle, but no one had the whole picture, Tyrolean. Oh, and if I remember, we could not talk. We had our pieces, but we could not talk. Or it was learning that my ability to get a little over halfway up the climbing wall. Remember, I'm one of the older participants, and I had never climbed a wall in my life. But my ability to get over halfway up that wall was because of my belay. We climbed it together. At the beginning, I said that ICL is about leadership, not leaders. For me, leadership became about owning my voice and building my ability to exercise influence regardless of my place in a group or in a situation. In its simplest form, it's taking responsibility for yourself and speaking up. Of course, it's oftentimes not that simple. Probably the most challenging part of this for me was learning to understand the importance of discomfort and disruption. I am so hardwired to not be disagreeable that it took me quite a while to understand the difference. It started with exploring the concept of educate first and then advocate. And from there, the ICL experiences reinforced my ability to build my skills in using questions, real exploratory questions, not gotcha questions, to focus on building on someone else's comment or observation instead of answering it. The ICL experience stays with me in all sorts of ways. As I've been sharing with you, I certainly learned and built a lot of new skills and experiences. It was a real gift to step away from regular obligations 2 days a month and enter a bit of a suspended universe. And it also was an experience filled with many fabulous memories of friendship and silliness and so much more, all of which were just as much a part of what we were there to experience as the stated program. There was Outward Bound and the solo night. That was an incredible sleep out. On my night, a weather system came through in the middle of the night and blew away clouds, leaving a moon so bright that it woke me up. It was an exceptional, the trees were just going like crazy. It had been dark and cloudy and heavy, and suddenly the sky was wide open. And then in the pre-dawn, there was the call of a moose somewhere nearby. And then sitting by a rushing stream, writing in my journal, waiting for the pickup. And then there was Mountain Day, or the night before Mountain Day, when we went through one of the most agonizingly infuriating experiences of how difficult it is for groups to make decisions. The Outward Bound instructors were devilishly calm as they enforced the rules. There were many choices of what we could choose to do, but in each instance, there had to be at least one Outward Bound instructor with the group. So of course, there were more choices than there were Outward Bound instructors. And of course, we couldn't agree to the number of choices that matched the number of Outward Bound instructors. I'll leave the rest to your imagination. But once I finally got into a group that was, we were gonna climb something. Not a wall, a hill, a mountain, I don't know, whatever it was. I had one of the most personally challenging and emotional experiences that I think I've had all my life. We were a group of, there must have been about 10 of us, and 2 of them were hot shots and were, a mile ahead of the rest of us. But the rule, I don't know if you all did this, but the rule was that if any one of the group had to stop or could not go on, the whole group had to stop and go back. And I'm old. I was not quite as old then, but I was old. And I was starting to have some difficulty. There was enough uphill that I was really starting to have some trouble. And the Outward Bound person was walking next to me, and I'm thinking, well, can I just rest, or we're close enough, I can go back. She said, no, if you want to stop, we will stop. We will all stop. And my 2 friends, one of whom is still a very dear friend, were way up front, and I could see Anne looking at me like, come on, wimp, you can do this. But I really couldn't. I wasn't sure I could make it up the hill. And another colleague was standing next to me, and she walked over and she said, "Yes, you can." And she took my pack, and she held my pack and her pack, and we went up the hill together. And I've never, ever forgotten that moment when Christine came over and rescued me from what was physically stressful, but much more importantly, it was hugely emotionally challenging. I was going to let this entire group down. I was going to be the one that said, "Sorry, but I can't keep going. We have to go back." And that would not have been fun on any of a number of levels. But ICL gave me the courage to figure that out and to create a balance between commitment to the group, but also honoring what I needed and what I could or couldn't handle in a particular situation. So, I do lots of different things, and as Jan said, I'm way overcommitted in terms of volunteer activity as well as a paid work life. But ICL is threaded through everything that I do. It has given me perspective. It has given me actual experience that I can now apply. It's given me phenomenal relationships and connections that I wouldn't trade for the world. And so I congratulate all of you. I know that whatever you do, ICL will be a part of where it takes you in the future. I want to congratulate you, and on belay and belay on. Thank you.